Yeah, I'm for those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Zimmerman from the Division of Health Research and Evaluation in Department of Family and Community Medicine. I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Cindy Veldhuis. Dr. Veldhuis and I worked together for a couple years in Chicago, and she's an excellent poster creator. So anyway, Dr. Veldhuis is a research psychologist at the Columbia University School of Nursing. Her research is funded by an NIH K99 R00. Broadly, her research focuses on LGBTQIA+ relationships and health, as well as violence, trauma, mental health, and the impact of socio-political events on well-being. She received her PhD in psychology from the University of Illinois at Chicago and completed her master's in cognitive psychology and bachelor's in theater and psychology at the University of Oregon. And I just wanted to say, like, I feel like her posters in particular really helped me to understand how a poster and presenting via a poster is different than other methods of dissemination, like a oral presentation or a manuscript, for example. So thank you. Welcome, Dr. Veldhuis, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for that introduction. I am going to share my screen. Okay, thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to talk today about creating compelling and well-designed posters, presentations, and a little bit about charts. For some reason, it's decided to do its own thing, and I don't want it to be timed. Okay. So I'm Cindy Veldhuis. I'm an associate research scientist at Columbia University, and I have a background as a graphic designer, and so some of what I'm going to be presenting today comes from that background, but also my interest in making sure that the things that I do are really compelling, that they're well designed, that they're well communicated, and that they grab attention immediately. I think I've been in poster presentations where I am in the back of the room, or maybe my topic is not necessarily as interesting to people as other things are, like cancer. And so I want to grab attention when people are anywhere close to my poster so that they come and see me. Also, I've been in poster presentations where they do them alphabetically. And so I always end up, I'm sure, Chris, if you've ever been in this experience, they're always at the end of the group. And so I want to really make sure that I get some attention. So unfortunately, there's no prize usually for the prettiest presentation or poster, but there are really pretty significant benefits for spending time creating an attractive PowerPoint or poster. And this is a struggle that I have a lot with students who work, who are getting trained at Columbia University, because they will put together a poster or presentation and they apologize to me because they know that it's not really well designed, but they feel like they don't really have time to do a better job at it. And I think one of the things that is true for me, and maybe true for others, I know is true for others, is that once you create a presentation or a poster, you're highly likely to recycle parts of it. So it's really worth spending the time to invest in designing it the first time you make it, because later on in your career, you're probably not going to spend that time. So while it's fresh in your mind that you want to spend some time doing some design elements to it or making it really clear and compelling, it's worth it. And the other benefits are that there's people are going to pay attention to it. They're going to remember it better. And it forces you to really pay attention to the audience experience of your poster presentation so that you're taking that audience perspective on what it is that you're presenting. And as I said, you're going to use this PowerPoint, I think, especially many times in your career. And so it's worth spending the time on the design now, because the better it is now, the better it's going to be later on, because you're just going to keep tweaking it. But if you start with just a basic PowerPoint with like 22 bullets on every page with a small font and using a template from PowerPoint, like that's just going to be the design that you use in perpetuity. So I have a couple little academic Lego slides in here with little jokes. So this is receiving no questions during his panel's lively Q&A. The grad student wishes that he could literally disappear. And I want to note that this is kind of a long presentation. And I would love for people to just interrupt me whenever they have questions or comments. I didn't set up my slides so that I could see all of the chat on my current screen. So it's better just to like interrupt me and ask a question. Or if Dr. Zimmerman wants to interrupt me with something that's in the chat, that's fine too. So there are a lot of commonalities among posters and presentations. And the biggest one is that you want to tell a clear story, and you want to tell it in a way that has very little distracting detail so people really attend to your points. And that's actually a really good maxim for publications as well. You don't want to go down some path that's going to distract the reviewers or the audience and make them think that you are going to present data on something that's completely different from what's in the introduction. And it's really helpful to use design to help make a story compelling and to focus your attention. I do that a lot in my presentations. I do use very little text in my presentations. Today's is a little bit of an anomaly. There's more text on these slides than there is typically for me. And I really try to use the way that I present things to keep people focused on my presentation. I think it's really easy if you are watching a presentation and if someone is speaking and they're basically just reading all of the bullet points on a slide, like it's hard to really pay attention to that, partly because maybe you have a copy of the slide so you know you can read it later, and partly because it's just really boring to hear the same thing that you're seeing on the slide. So it's important to try to capture people's attention and keep people's attention. So tell a clear story, make it parsimonious, and use design to help keep attention and capture attention. So some of the tools of the trade for making presentations, people constantly come to me and say that they need to get some expensive design program to make their posters and presentations. And I strongly disagree with that. PowerPoint is a really, really powerful design program at this point. I think it's not just good for making PowerPoints, it's good for making posters, it's good for making signs, flyers, handouts, an ad for something if you are using it for recruitment purposes. It's a really good design program at this point. You have to spend a little bit of time to learn all of the different tools, but there's a lot that you can do with it. There's also Google Docs and Keynote. I know those less. Keynote has some really nice design features to it, and the templates actually in both Google Docs and Keynote are really attractive as well. You can find a ton of templates on the internet that are free for PowerPoint and for other design and for other programs. And I use those sometimes. I don't usually use templates, but I have a presentation that I do on productivity during a pandemic, and I used one that I downloaded, and it gets a lot of attention because it's really attractive, it's clear, and it's different from anything that anyone else has seen. You can also use the Adobe Creative Suite. That's something that I subscribe to. There are a couple of options for that. You can actually purchase the programs, or you can do a subscription based where you get updates constantly and you pay a monthly fee. I love those. There's a really high learning curve for learning how to use them. So I actually don't recommend it unless you really want to get invested in design. I learned how to use them by using what used to be called lynda.com, but now you use it through LinkedIn, and I think UIC has a subscription to it. It's free tutorials online, and there are hours and hours and hours of content on how to learn how to use the Adobe Creative Suite. InDesign is for layout, Illustrator is for illustrating, and then Photoshop is for photo editing. And then there are also online design programs and infographic makers. And I do also recommend these aside from PowerPoint. There are a ton of infographic makers online. And I think that that's one of the best tools for making posters. And I'll show you why I think that later. And then one of my students working with me has been using Canva, which is nice. It makes very nice ads for our study. And I think that that's also recommended. And those are all generally free unless you want a pro version.
So just to interrupt briefly,
Yeah.
UIC does have a Adobe Creative Suite license as well. I know faculty and staff have access. I'm not sure about students, but it's free. So I don't know if it has all of the programs, but it has a substantial number. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, it likely has at least a Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, and maybe like Dreamweaver or something to edit video. And that's not generally, you don't need more than that usually. Okay, so some specific tips and tricks for doing PowerPoints. So I'm going to show you examples of all of these things. Some of them are a little bit ridiculous, but I kind of like things that are more fun. figuring that I might find a really good use for it later on. So I'm going to show you how to use Superfun Pens, the selection pane, photos, icons, and editing, fonts, color schemes, animations, slide master, and charts and templates. At the end of this presentation, I'll show you some examples of slides and posters as well. So Superfun Pens, I have to exit to do this, and I'm not going to do that because I have it on the next slide. Oh, wait, I am going to exit. So you find pens. I'm going to show you, can everyone see my PowerPoint, like the actual window with all of the tools and everything? Okay.
Yeah.
So if you go to, do you see draw? Can you see the pens in draw?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So there you have pens, access to pens in PowerPoint. This is a Mac version. It's also available in the PC version, but it's in a different place. So you have a highlighter, you have a pencil, you have like a little calligraphy pen. I like this one because it's really ridiculous. You can make glittery pens, and then you can use it to write things. So some people find this is really useful for making, like if you have to include an equation in a presentation, if you want to draw a circle around something, I'll show you a couple of uses for this. I think it's fun and it's cute, etc. So let me go back to my presentation. Okay, so UIC Flames, I wrote this with one of the cosmic pens. And one of the things that's really nice about this is that you can actually have it convert what you draw into words. And this works for equations too, which is really nice. If you want to just write down an equation because it's too exhausting to try to figure out all the symbols for it, you can just write it in that drawing piece and then it will convert it into an equation for you. As you can see, it's not perfect. It didn't get the I in UIC, but also like I have pretty bad handwriting. This is maybe like a better example of my normal handwriting. But in the past, I've done like super messy handwriting and it still is able to read it, which is pretty amazing. And to do this, I used my iPad as a sidecar and drew on it with my pencil, my Apple Pencil, which is a really nice thing to be able to do, that you have like this tablet that you can just draw onto in order to do the PowerPoint. So a more practical use for that is you can use it to have people pay attention to something. So you can draw a circle around something with an arrow. You can also use it to highlight a row. So in order to do that, let me exit this again. So if you want to draw something and then have it be animated, go into draw and you draw a circle around something, and then you go to animation. Oops, you have to go back to draw. Select it, go to animation, and then replay it. And it's now an animation that's in your presentation, which is really nice. So there are ways that you can use this to call attention to something. If you want to include an equation, there are a lot of different uses for it. I don't fully know all of the different ways that I might use it, but it's nice to sometimes do something completely different in a presentation to get people to pay attention. Okay. So here I used the highlighter and I just drew a line to highlight United States. It doesn't work as well as like if you put a long box over it and made it transparent, because it's sort of like, it's a little bit opaque, so you can't completely see through it, but it still is an interesting tool. So the next one that I want to show you is the selection pane. And this is one of the most important things that you can learn. There we go. In PowerPoint. So the selection pane on a Mac is found on the Home tab under Drawing, Arrange, all the way at the bottom, it's the selection pane. So the reason that the selection pane is really helpful is that it can be really hard to, if you have kind of a complicated slide with a lot of things on it, to order things. The way that It's always hard to do things when people are watching you. I forget where things are. Why am I not remembering where that is?
It looks like you have instructions to yourself in your notes.
Yeah, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. Oh, it's up here, arrange. So this is one of the ways that you can reorder overlapping things. You can do this and show you all of the different layers of your slide, and you can do it that way. But a more powerful and easy way to do it is that you open up the selection pane and you have access to every layer in your presentation, in your slide, and you can show or hide things. So it's nice if you want to try out a couple different pictures. You can hide one because you decide that you want one or more than the other, but you don't want to delete it. And it also can make it so that you can like have different layers in it.
Sorry, actually, I haven't seen anything in my screen. Any change?
Can you see it now?
Oh yeah, I think.
Okay,
I think we missed that.
Okay, so this is the selection pane here, and it's how you can look at the ordering of things, of the layers in your presentation. So you can show and hide different things. You can reorder things. So I can move things to the back without having to worry about this other way that PowerPoint lets you to do it. So I find this to be a little bit confounding. I don't enjoy having to move things around with this method because it's less intuitive. So selection pane is really, really helpful. Okay. Maybe I'll just keep it like this for a while since I'm showing different things to do. So you can use photos in your presentation. One of the really nice things about PowerPoint, especially most recent versions. So one of the things that I do want to note is that depending on the version of PowerPoint you have, you're going to have access to different things. So I have Office 365, which means that it's constantly updating, which I like because I always like the newest things. But if you have an older version, like if you have Word, whatever, an older version is 97 or something, then your access to different tools is going to be limited based on what's available for that. So that's unfortunate. So if you have access to 365, I think that's the best because then you have access to everything. So you can insert a photo and you can choose stock images. And you have access to all of the stock images that Microsoft has, which is really, really nice. There are actually some really good ones in here. And I was looking for cute pictures. And so then if you look for puppy, you have all of these cute ones. Sometimes you have to be a little bit creative about the words you are using. I think I was trying to find an image to demonstrate collaboration, and it took like multiple looks at a thesaurus to try to come up with the word that Microsoft would use to get images that showed a collaboration. But you have free access to all of the images in their library, which is a really, really nice tool because it can be kind of a pain to try to find free, accessible, license-free images on the web. So one of the mistakes that people use make when they're using photos is that oh, it's not even going to let me do it. Right. So they resize things by just doing something like this. Have you ever seen like a photo, like they have pictures in a PowerPoint and they're like way too skinny or way too wide, and it's really disconcerting. So the trick for resizing photos is that you hit your shift key and then drag, and it's always going to keep the aspect ratio. So it's always going to keep it in the right proportions, which is a really nice trick. The other thing I want to show you about PowerPoint and images is this picture format. I'm going to show you some of the fun things about it later, but right now I want to show you this crop tool, What's really, really fantastic about this crop tool is that a lot of times when you crop a photo, it literally crops it. So it like cuts out all of the stuff that you've cropped and it's gone. And PowerPoint, it keeps it all there. Basically, all you're doing is changing what is framed and what's shown. So here I'm cropping it so that we're just going to look at the puppy's face. And then I'm done, I've cropped it. But if I go back into crop, it's all still there. So you don't actually cut anything off when you're cropping things. And what's also nice is then you can play around with it. If you just drag the photo around, you can choose what's being highlighted in that little frame, which is really, really nice. I also really love in the insert, you can go to icons. So here I've got 2 little penguins that are from the icon panel, and they're more professional icons as well. There are also some really amazing icons in here that are super fun. I love these icons. They're really great for presentations to really call attention to things. And one of the things that's really nice about them too is that if you go into graphics format, which I got to just by double clicking on the icon, you can change the color of it. So you can change the size of it. You can change the color. You have a lot of latitude for using it to get a nice icon to help with your presentation. Any comments or questions so far? Okay. So this next one is maybe less useful to you all. Well, that's not true. So a lot of times people will include images in their presentations, and you see a ton of background, and you can crop out the background, but it can be kind of annoying. It's nicer when people do presentations and the image has the background sort of knocked out so you're not seeing it. And that's a really easy thing to do in PowerPoint at this point. So here we have this picture of a sheep. We go to picture format and you say remove background. So everything that's in pink is going to get removed. So we have to edit that a little bit. So we click on mark area to keep and just sort of circle around his ear. Might have to do it a couple times to keep the full thing that you want to. Keep this ear. Try to get that entire ear. And then try to get the body fully. That's good enough. And then keep those changes. And then we have an image with the background knocked out. It's easier to do this with images that have kind of a plain background. If there's a lot of distracting detail, it can be a little bit harder, but it's not impossible. But like if you're trying to show like a photo of a cell and you want to just show the cell itself and not all the background, because remember, part of the point is to not distract people with details. So this is a really nice way to keep people focused on exactly what you want to show them. So this next one is about photo editing. So I was in a presentation that was really interesting, but I had the presentation in front of me and I really didn't like the slides of the person who was doing the presentation. So I was distracting myself by reformatting their presentation. And I learned some kind of interesting things about photo editing when I did that. So we already talked about how to crop, how to use resizing. Okay. So this is the slide that she showed that I wanted to redesign. So there's not really great hierarchy of information here. Like there's this header here, but then all the text is black and you're not really understanding what's going on here. This image is kind of meaningless because what is even the point of it? And you can barely even see it. I don't know what that red dot is. So I decided to redesign it by having this be like the hero image. So this takes up more of the slide. So there's a nice focus and a hierarchy to the text in here. So this is the header. And then this is a subheader that's in red and larger font, red, large and font. So I'm going to show you how to do that with the photo. There are a lot of options for photo editing in here. And that's one of the reasons why it's a really good design program. So you can change the color. I often will desaturate photos, make them black and white, or just like take the color down a little bit for presentations, because I like things to be uniform. I don't want all of the colors on some of my slides to be distracting. And sometimes I just think it's attractive. So let's go back to what it was like before. So this is in the artistic effects, you have some options for different things that you can do with an image. So this is the one that I chose and the one that I just showed you. And what's kind of nice is that about this is it makes it a little bit arty. So if the image is more for like design, decoration, and people don't really need to focus on the actual image for understanding, then this is a nice trick to try. The way that I use these a lot is that I'll blur it out. And I'll show you my slides in a little bit, but I use really large images in my slides. And one of the things that I can do sometimes to keep people focused is that I will start with this image and then have this one animate in, so that if I have like a graph on top of it, like the image is still there, but it's a little bit blurry, so it's not pulling attention anymore. Fonts. So when you're choosing fonts, choose fonts that are clear, that are easy to read. You can mix fonts, but keep it simple and clean. You don't have to do this anymore for Macs, but it used to be, or if you have an older version, if you have a Mac, sometimes if you choose a font that's not on a computer that you're presenting on, and we all bring our own laptops at this point, but sometimes you go and give a presentation and you have to use a resident computer. It's possible that the font that you've used in your presentation is not going to be on that computer and you have to choose to embed it. I don't know where that is anymore, but that's just a consideration to make sure that you're taken care of. If you're presenting, like, all the things you can do in advance to make sure that your presentation turns out exactly the way that you designed it is really important. I've gone in to give presentations and like the font all of a sudden is changed and it takes up the entire like slide and everything is just all knocked off. And it's really disconcerting to go in and be ready to give a presentation. And then all of a sudden your slides look completely different. Like, you don't really want to start a presentation that way. So this next one is a little bit, again, kind of fun, but you can embed an image into text. So this is, you can see the text here. This is just black font text, and this is a photo. If you select the photo first and then the text, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, and go to shape format, and then go to intersect, it will embed the image into the font, which is really nice. So if you want to do something interesting on your header slide, like if you have a slide of cells of a cell culture and you want to embed that into the font, you can do that. It's a nice, attractive, fun thing to do. And then you can resize this so it's bigger if you want to, so people can see it more. So I want to show you how to add colors. So UIC actually has a really nice PowerPoint template on the marketing page that's really quite attractive. And I pulled down the colors for UIC there. It's not a horrible idea to use your school's colors in your presentation, and especially in your posters. One of the things that you want to do is really represent the university where you are, so that people know that you're representative of them, and so that it looks good for the university and for you, for that affiliation. And when you are doing a poster, you really want people to be able to clearly tell where you are a student or a faculty member, a postdoc, so that they know that that's a poster from that specific university. So make good use of logos, make good use of the colors of the school. These are the primary colors for UIC, this red, this paler blue, and then this darker blue. And then I have the RGB here. The way that you create colors is go to, sometimes when you like have a less wide screen, everything doesn't show up, which is really annoying. Go to shape format. So go to shape fill, more fill colors, and RGB means the red, green, blue. So that's one way of just determining what your color is. So you put the numbers in there. So on the UIC webpage, they give you these 3 numbers for RGB. So you put the 213 is the first number, then 0, and then 50, and that gives you the color. And you add that. And once you add that color, it's going to be available to you here in recent colors. So I did that for the main colors and for the secondary colors. So it's really nice that UIC has so many colors that you can use, so you have some flexibility in how you do your presentations. So you can combine like the dark blue with some of with the pink and the red, and have some nice flexibility in terms of the colors. You can see these used to be Columbia's colors, and now these are Columbia's colors, and I really hate these two colors. So I keep using the older ones, or actually I've gone rogue and do my own thing at this point, which is not advisable. But Columbia does not have good PowerPoint templates, and the colors are hard to work with. So I'm assuming you all know how to use animations, and there are a lot of strong feelings about animations. Some people think that they're horrible and you should never use them. And I think you should use them constantly and sparingly, and use really simple animations. And the reason for that, again, is going back to our helping people figure out where to pay attention to things. So I have to go back into my presentation to show you this. So this is not a good animation to use because it's just so distracting. That one as well. But if you have things just appear or fade in, then they're not distracting, they don't look unprofessional, and they just help people pay attention to things. So you can use animations well to keep attention on what you want. And then the next thing, I have to go back to this, is Slide Master. So when you get a PowerPoint template, a lot of times like the font is already chosen for you, the layout's chosen for you, maybe the color of the text is already chosen for you, and maybe you don't like everything in that template, or you're tired of having to fix the font or the color every single slide. You can go into Slide Master, which is here. And it gives you access to being able to change everything in your presentation that you want to. This big one here is the main one, and any changes you make here will potentially affect your entire presentation. It's a little bit complicated, so sometimes you have to do different things. But if you want to change the font here of the header for your slides, that's going to change the font in your presentation. You can change the colors, you can change how the bullets look, you can change the color of different specific slides. But you have complete control over what things look like in a template, and you can create your own templates this way too. Okay, the next one I want to show you is probably like, this may be the best tip I can give you in this presentation. Like, this is worth the price of admission to this presentation, and that's chart templates. And I don't know if you've done a presentation before where you've had multiple charts in it, and it's just a pain to have to go in and make every chart look the same, or maybe you're not as anal as I am about the look of things, but you don't want different charts looking differently. Like, you make a chart and you've got the font the way you want it, you've got the colors the way you want it, you like the layout of it, and then you make another chart and then it's completely different. You have to do it all over again. So one of the things that's really, really fantastic in Excel is that you can make a chart and then tell it that you like it so much that you want to save it as a template. And so I'm going to call this super cute bar chart, and it's saved as a template. And then I've made this other template in Excel that I've pasted in, and I am going to change chart type, go to templates, and choose super cute bar chart. And now my second chart is exactly like the first one. So I have presentations where I have like pie chart after pie chart after pie chart. And until I discovered this, I was having to do it every time by hand, and trying to make sure that they were the same across them was really a pain. So being able to make templates has been kind of a life changer for me. So this is the end of the presentation section. I'm going to talk about posters next. Does anyone have any questions about presentations?
Yeah, I just have a quick question here. Thanks for the presentation, Cindy. I was just curious if it's normally best practice to use the same color font throughout the presentation, or if it's okay to, sort of mix up. I'm sorry, not font color. If you can mix up different colors, or if it's normally just best practice to use one color for uniformity for the font or for the text?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't tend to use the same color throughout, but I'm thoughtful about how I use color. So I will, so for the header section, for like the part where I talk about the background of a study, I will use one color for that. And then when I talk about the methods, I have a different color for that, results a different color for that, and then discussion a different color for that. So I use color to sort of delineate which section I'm in, to show that there's a new section. So you use it very purposefully. In general, you shouldn't use more than like 3 colors in a presentation, maybe 4. If you have a really complicated pie chart, obviously there's going to be more colors, but just you don't want so many colors that it's overwhelming to the eye and that people don't know where to look because there's so much going on your slide. So just use color to help you focus people's attention and help them understand like the layout of your presentation. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So on to posters. So this is Lego graduate student. He says spotting multiple errors on his poster. The grad student is almost relieved that nobody is looking at his research. So if you've done a really bad job on a poster, like maybe you make a poster and you're really happy with it, and then you look at it and you realize you made a really large error, maybe you're very happy to just sort of like shrink into the shadows and have no one notice it. But if you're wanting to network, if you're wanting people to notice your research, if you're wanting to talk to people about your research, you really do want people to pay attention. And I'm sure I have this in here somewhere, but just so I don't forget, these 2 big tips that I have about poster presentations are, one, that you have a little elevator pitch about your poster ready. I usually have like a couple versions, like I have a 30-second version for someone who's just like walking by and I want to try to get their attention and to get them to talk to me. So I give them a quick pitch about my poster. And then I have one that's like maybe a minute or 3 minutes that's about the poster as a whole that I can give to someone who's actually interested in the poster and wants to talk to me about it. The second tip that I have, that's maybe the most important tip and maybe one of the most controversial tips, is that there shouldn't be any more text on your poster than it was in the abstract that you submitted to be a part of the conference. You don't want a lot of text on the poster. No one is going to stand and read your poster. At some poster sessions, people are up drinking and they don't have the greatest comprehension for reading. They're not going to sit there and read your entire poster. So don't even put all that text on there. So take the abstract that you submitted to the conference and use that abstract to create the text for your poster, the background, the results, and the discussion, and then just add images, so graphs and charts. Some people, and I think especially in medicine, will put an abstract on their poster and then the background, methods, results. There's really, unless the conference absolutely requires it, there's no need for an abstract on your poster because the poster itself is an abstract. So there's no reason to duplicate that language. So general tips on posters: figure out the story that you want to tell. This is really, really critical. And this is like, hopefully you did this when you did your abstract. Maybe you need to do some tweaking of your abstract because you actually analyzed your data by the time you did your poster and you've got different findings, so you have to shift it a little bit. But you can't tell the person who's reading your poster everything about your data. You have to create a really coherent, easily digestible story about your data. Little to more, no text, no more than your abstract. 3 to 5 colors maximum on your poster. Use color to create spaces. Lighter backgrounds are easier to see. Oh, I didn't edit this for you, I see, but make it clearly that this is a poster from your university. Use large graphs and images in your poster. Use all caps sparingly because it's really hard for people to read alt caps. Tables are the worst. Don't ever put a table in a poster. And I know that everyone in here is gonna likely do that anyway, but I will explain to you in a bit why that's true. Visually depict your results so that it's very clear what it is that you found so that people are really engaged and that your depiction of your results is compelling. And then print copies of your poster if you're presenting in person, which it doesn't happen quite as much over the past few years, and include your contact information in there so you can give people a copy of your poster. So there's a press to do the Better Poster movement, and this was created in reaction to all of the horrible posters that appear at conferences with way too much text, with the findings really hidden in there, usually in a big table that no one can read. with the title of the poster that's just not really comprehensible and doesn't really tell you anything about what was done in the study. And so the movement towards the better poster movement is to have this gigantic block in the middle of your poster, which has like just your main finding, and then you put the text and the graphs and charts around it. So there are some benefits to this, and this was definitely a really great way to get people to talk more about posters and to get a focus on like the audience experience of a poster. There's some problems with it though. So one is that it really varies all of your like charts and graphs, which I think is really important for helping people understand your findings. Like I don't really want to go up to a poster and have someone tell me what it is that they found in one sentence and have me just sort of like accept that and go away. I want to look at the data. I want to look at the methods, and all of that's kind of buried in this method. The other thing is that I think, from what I understand, it's been a while since I've been in-person conference, is that like this has sort of taken over some conferences, I think, especially in the basic sciences, and every poster uses this. And so if you use this method, you're just not going to stand out in a sea of other posters that look exactly like this. So you can use some of the principles of this, like make it clear, make a clear story, use visual depictions of your data, make sure that it's very clear like what the key findings are, but tweak with the formatting of it so that you stand out. The other thing that I really like about this better poster movement, oops, I guess the video is not embedded. There we go. Is that he decided to make Twitter posters. So this is one that I made. I'm not going to show the entire thing, but this is a super short little video that I posted on Twitter about my COVID study so that people knew what was going on in terms of COVID and mental health. And this got a lot of tweets, a lot of retweets, a lot of looks, and it was a really nice way to be able to talk about my research. So I'm going to show you some highly imperfect poster examples and show you what's wrong with all of them. These are ones that I've done myself. So this is from PhD Comics, and she's saying, here, use this magnifying glass. Let me know if you have any questions, because everything on her poster is so small. And the title on that says the journal paper that I cut and pasted and put in poster format. So this is the main problem with posters, is that people put just way too much on the poster that no one can really digest it. So this is one of the first posters I did. I don't know if Dr. Zimmerman remembers this or not, but this was, I was trying to attract the attention of my later postdoc mentor by doing some research in her area. And I was really proud of this poster when I did it, because I thought that it was really kind of pretty. I liked the way that I had it laid out. I liked the colors. I liked the large graphs. I had a table in there, which is not the best because no one looks at it. But I was really pretty happy with this. This was in 2016. But some of the problems are that there's a table in there. There's way too much text. Yeah, I'm using really annoying animations here. Way too many colors. And so it wasn't the greatest poster. So later on, I decided instead of using tables, I was going to try to use sort of a mix of like a text version of tables laid on to icons. And this was a little bit better, I think. I used color to create spaces so it's clear what are women, what are men, and this corresponded with the graphs on the poster so that everything related to women was in that orange color, everything related to men was in that turquoise color. Large graphs and images, but I still was really using tables. Like it's not, you can't scan this and understand what's going on. You have to really read it. You have to read the odds ratios and the confidence intervals, look for the significance values. It's just not easy to scan, but I was trying to visually depict my results. So this one's a little bit better, but there's still too much text on it. I was trying to tell a clear story, but again, too much text. I was using color to create spaces. I was using large graphs and images. I got rid of my tables and I was visually depicting my results, but there's still too much on here. But what I was trying to do is sort of show across, like orange is like bad. And so I was trying to show like where things were bad or not, so that something about the dynamics of the movement across graphs was meaningful, but like really at a poster presentation, no one's going to stop and really try to understand the underlying dynamics of all of your graphs and charts. So it wasn't the most successful, but it was definitely better. So this is when my postdoc mentor suggested that I start looking into using infographics instead of the typical poster layout. And this was my first try at that. And I think that this is one of the more successful ones. Little to no text. I used just a few colors. I used color to create spaces. It had a lighter background for the most part. The method section is a little bit dark. I don't know if you can see, but that's an image of the Chicago skyline in the background of that orange. It was clearly branded with UIC, large graphs and images. I used all caps sparingly just for the headers. Tables, no tables in there. And then I was trying to visually depict the results by using icons and numbers. So I was trying to really very clearly show what the proportions were of things with images that depicted that. I don't know what this white square is. So you can see very clear, like couples that live together, 27% of them are heavy drinking. Couples that live apart, 23% heavy drink, and then single people, 49.6% heavy drink. So in general, people who are single are at highest risk compared to people who are in relationships, whether they live together or not. So that was the main point of this. And I think this was more successful than previous ones, but could still be improved. So the next one is, this was from my dissertation. I wanted to do a map of Chicago and map the depression rates across the city. I had a clear story, but still way too much text. I don't know why I also needed the forest plot of odds ratios, because that's, again, like just way too much detail. But I was using a large graph for image. The map was very, very successful. This was, I was nominated for an award for this, although I didn't get it. And I was trying to visually depict the results. And what I was trying to do with these little circles is show that to some extent that there is a similar distribution of risk factors across Chicago, across different risk factors. So I also had in the background a map of Chicago in the very back. I don't know if you can see it. And I was trying to use like sort of a grayish color so that not to distract from the map itself. So not the best, but I think again, an improvement. And then this was another place where I wanted to use a map, and I think this is a little bit better to some extent, but it was hard to figure out how to do, show the percentages for each country. But this was, we were looking at like trends in the literature in health and well-being among sexual minority women across the world. So it's a heat map with some like call outs for rates of publications in each of these countries. And then I had more graphs down here, and probably that's too much. I think just this is enough. But again, I'm trying to use color to create spaces. I had a clear story, still maybe too much text, but better than earlier, and visually depicting the results. Oh, so here I'm just trying to highlight the map and the little, I was trying to make cute little bar charts using icons instead of bars, and it's mildly successful. It was definitely fun. And then I think this is one of my better ones, again, using Chicago as a background here, some bar charts here, and then a model here, very little text in this one. And this got a fair amount of attention at this conference. I think the colors were very attractive to people. They were soothing, but also like attention getting, and then having the graphs and the model, I think were attractive to people. So one of the things that I did was we had a student who gave me one of her posters, and she asked me to redesign it for her. And I'll show you her poster. So what are some of the things that you think are wrong with this poster? Anyone can just like jump in and tell me.
Or put it in the chat.
It's not my poster, so you can be critical as you want.
I think there's way too much text and it jumps around a lot. Like I feel like there's no flow.
Yeah, there's definitely no flow, and there's a ton of text. And even in some of the like images she's using, there's text in there. Anything else?
The color
Images are
scheme
not-
is boring.
The color scheme is boring. And there's another comment at the same time.
The images are not clear, they're blurry, and then there's a table.
Yes, there's a table. Images are
Oh.
super clear.
And then someone said, oh, lots of comments now. Prior testing and final version headers seem to be out of place compared to the others. So that
Yeah.
like weird mismatch of headings.
Yes.
Lots of empty spaces, space wasted.
I'm actually a huge fan of white space, but it's not well used. Like it doesn't help you like see anything. Like there's a lot of white space here, which is, I don't understand why that's there, but like next to none here in this text block. And so you don't get any rest from the text. Yeah, those are all really good comments. So this was my redesign. I did this in PowerPoint because I wanted to use this as a template for our students to use and to show them that they didn't need any kind of fancy software in order to be able to do it. So first I made it very clear where this poster was done. I made the title super clear. I had clear sections, an objective, background, methods and designs with icons to sort of like get people to be a little bit interested visually, a depiction of the results, and then implications. So this was an attempt to try to improve it. It didn't take much time to do it. I've made these templates available to all of our students so that they can use them, and they have with some success. It's easy to use this template because you just replace the icons, you replace the words, and you're good to go. Put in a couple of graphs. So this is an easy way to redesign a poster so that it's more usable, more user-friendly, and helps people focus better on what it is that you're doing. And it really stands out. So if you are in a sea of better posters and then posters that have a ton of text, people are going to stop and look at yours because it's really easy to see and read. So I'm going to show you some PowerPoint examples now. So this is the Lego graduate student. It says, coming to a particularly flimsy slide, the grad student nervously watches dozens of eyes stare at the work of a fraud. Poor guy. So this is a presentation I did about the impacts of the 2016 election on LGBT people. I wanted to use a lot of images because part of my goal was to make people upset while they were watching it. And it was highly successful in that regard, in that not only did the audience cry during the presentation, I also cried during the presentation. And at the end, someone who's now a friend of mine stood up and offered to give hugs to anyone who was upset. So it was an emotional presentation and the audience was with me in that emotion. And I do kind of like to do a little bit of manipulation of my audience in my presentations by getting them to feel things during it. So it was successful on that front. So I used this image of this event at the Supreme Court after the marriage equality. And then I graded out a little bit to help people focus on the text. And this was the only text I had on this slide. So I just had the word background with the colored background for that. So part of the reason is I don't like to put a lot of text on my slides. The burden then is on me to know what it is that I'm presenting for each slide. And that, you know, you can use slide presenter mode, and that's easier to do when you're presenting in person than it is when you're presenting from home, because when you're on chat, so that's just how I have it set up right now because I didn't set it up a different way, but I can't see everyone on the presentation while I'm presenting on Zoom. I can't see the chat. So this isn't ideal in terms of how I'm presenting this right now. Generally, when I do presentations on Zoom, I have it set up so that I'm presenting using my slides as a kiosk. So all I see is this slide on a part of my screen. And then I have the script for my presentation on a different window. And then I have pictures, the images of everyone who's on this on the Zoom call over here. And then the chat is down there so I can see it all at the same time. This presentation I'm doing for you right now is a little bit older and I haven't set it up that way to be able to do that. So the onus is on me to remember what it is that I want to present for everyone. There are good things and bad things about that. The benefit of it is that you're not reading to the audience, so they're going to be more engaged with you. So it's more like you're having a conversation with our audience rather than you're just standing up and reading to them. So it makes a better experience for everyone. So this is a similar slide from that same presentation, types of studies. And then I grayed out the slide a little bit, and then I put on my pie charts. Bar chart. I've been playing around a lot with how to depict the numbers in bar charts. I will sometimes put it on the end of it. Sometimes I put it in the middle of it. In some pie charts that I'm doing, I don't know if I have it in this presentation. Yeah, I use a little like flag to show the presentation, the percent in the same color as the slice of the pie. So there are different ways that you can lay out your graphs and charts to really make sure that people understand exactly what's going on with it. So this is another image with a graph on top of it. So this is a line chart, and I use little flags to show each of these lines who they belong to. I think one of the challenges when you're doing charts and graphs in presentations is often there's like a little legend over to the side to show you what the colors in a chart mean. And it's really, really hard when you're in an audience to be able to quickly connect those colors to the lines or the slices or the bars. And because it can be hard to see and it's just hard to do quickly. So doing something to very clearly connect the colors in your graphs and charts to who that represents is really, really helpful. And that's another example of some pie charts that I did and a bar chart. So this is maybe one of the slides with the most text ever that I have, and that's just to show people what it is that I'm going to be talking about. And then I have talking points that I give that are not shown to the audience. One of the drawbacks to this is that it makes it really hard to give slides afterwards because you're not giving them like all the information that would be on this slide. So you can like give a copy of your talking points to the audience instead of your slides. And this is another way that I did bar charts. So I put them in little boxes to show, and I wanted to show like across all of these different anti-LGBT hate crime types, like what are the proportions so that people could compare across graphs. And this is a presentation that a student at Yale did for us at our fellows meeting. And I thought he did a really nice job of visually depicting things in very different ways than I do that I found really, really admirable. So I really like this bar chart. This one's a little bit harder to understand, but he was trying to show latent models. And so he used color and bar charts, like complex bar charts to show different associations. This is kind of a table, but in a way that's easy to read and understand. More charts and tables. Okay. So just to sort of wrap things up, this is another Lego grad student complimenting a professor asking a great question. The student hopes to flatter his way out of having a terrible answer. So I sort of talked about this already, some of the pros and cons to having a few words on slides. You have to remember, you have to have it written out or use presenter view. And sometimes when you're presenting in person, having access to presenter view can be really iffy, especially if you're changing computers, if you're using a PC when you've used a Mac. And it can be hard sometimes to scroll if you have a lot of notes. People are used to reading words on slides, and so they can kind of feel a bit like put off if you don't have all of your text on the slides. And then again, slides with few words are not so helpful, but it makes it more of a conversation with your audience. It makes you more engaged and them more engaged and with you. So you're more memorable. My final tip is when you're back to presenting in person. So this says setting up his laptop for a workshop presentation. The grad student realizes he forgot to bring his dongle. Don't ever forget to bring a dongle. So if you're presenting for your laptop, make sure that you've got every kind of dongle you need for any kind of projector so that you're set up. Because I did a presentation at the United Nations actually, and I didn't have the right dongle and they had to go to the Apple store and buy one for me. And it took a long time for them to get there, and it was a lot of anxiety provoking time for me, and I don't recommend that. So be prepared. So questions, comments, concerns, and then here's how to contact me if you wish. I think we have a couple, we have no time, but if anyone wants to stay around.
I do have a couple questions, Cindy, but I want to make sure if anyone has like a burning question.
Yeah.
Want to leave time. It doesn't look like it. So my questions are about charts in particular. And if you could just, well, I feel like there's some controversy about certain types of charts, like stacked bar charts, for example. I know some people loathe them. But I also was hoping you could comment on like too much, like when you should, I get, if you have a pie with like 10 slices, that might be really challenging. So those are two questions. If you can talk about pie or chart controversies that you're aware of and how to mitigate that, and then how much is too much information for a chart.
Yeah, those are really good questions. So I don't believe that any chart is off limits. Like if it's a good chart to show your data in the best way possible, then use it. If a stacked bar chart is the best way to show your data, if a pie, like people have a lot of feelings about pie charts and donut charts. I love them because they're quick and easy, and it's easy to tell when things move across pie charts. So if it tells a good story for your data, then use it. I think, yeah, it's a really good idea to think about exactly what levels and what variables you need to show in your chart and what's important. And that's a whole nother presentation, like making the charts. And actually, like I have in this presentation, I have 181 slides, and that's because I have a whole nother component on charts and graphs. And there are ways that you can do that. So sometimes you want to show all of your data. Like let's say you have a pie chart and you've got 12 different categories in there, and 2 are important, but you want to show the associations with the others. What you can do is like put in color the ones that are most important and the rest in different shades of gray. So they sort of like blend into the background. They're there, but they don't take attention, and you're focusing on what you want. Another option is to have a super complicated pie chart and then to explode out into another pie chart that's like just showing something specific. Or you can do like a very simple pie chart and explode one of those pies out into another pie chart to show like what comprises that one piece of the pie. So I think there are different ways you can do it, and just think about what's the most important thing to tell with the data that you've got and how to make sure that people are paying attention to what you want them to understand.
Thank you. Are there any
Any
other
other
questions?
I had a question about, I guess, the presentations. I think typically we're told to have less text, but I'm thinking about like accessibility and how I think for a lot of people it takes time to like process things, especially like if you're talking through presentations and if there aren't any like text, how do you, I guess, have people like follow along, especially if like for example with the example you provided where there's not really a lot of text, and so I'm ultimately having to rely on listening to you, and maybe it takes me a while to process and understand what you're saying. So how do you I guess reconcile that when you're thinking about doing presentations and like your possible target audience?
Yeah, and there aren't really great answers for that. And I think teaching is different than presenting at a conference too. Like if I'm teaching, then I want to include a lot of text on there because students do often need to see the visual in addition to hearing it in order to be able to make it make sense. For presentations, like I put the text on there that I think is most important for people to see in order to understand what I'm talking about. And accessibility is an issue. So we have a student who has her workaround for that is that she offers her speaking notes in advance to people so that they can have it. She gives people slides in advance. You can also give people slides in advance with your speaking points in the, in your comments. You can include that in what you hand out to people in advance or afterwards. So they've got all of that. So I think there's some workarounds, but I do think that that's a good consideration to think about who your audience is and what might be some of the things that you want to make sure that you really take into account.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other comments or questions?
I do have another question, but I want to, again, see if anyone else has questions. I think Kosi and I and some of our the folks in our division are kind of in the minority, but although some medical students are doing qualitative work as well, I think a lot of the researchers on our campus are not doing qualitative work, but some of us do. And so I guess if you have any, it's really hard to do a qualitative research poster without a lot of text. So if you have suggestions or tips for how to convey qualitative results, that would also be really helpful. It's always a challenge when we're creating posters.
Yeah, we actually, so we have this thing called the Qualitative Studio at Columbia, where we talk about more advanced topics in qualitative research. And the last one we did was on how to do a poster on qualitative findings. And I think you have to really use color and form to connect things. So have like a specific color for each theme, and then have exemplars of quotes that are in that same color using the same format so that things are connected. And I think then if you have your theme in large font and really attracting attention, then people can read the quotes or not to understand them. So make sure that there's a hierarchy of information and that the quotes are examples of something larger that people can easily look at and understand pretty quickly. It's impossible to do a qualitative poster without a lot of text. And I tend to do mixed methods research, which is a little bit easier because then you can show cute bars, charts, and graphs, and the quant people understand what you're doing, and then the qual people get some nice quotes. It's a little bit more challenging in presentations too, and that's one part where in a presentation, I always include the full quote in the text because it's too hard for people to listen to you reading a quote and to hear it without seeing it as well. So you just have to make really good use of design in order to help people focus attention and get the gist without having to read the quotes.
Yes, and I think it reiterates your point about making sure you know your story and what story you are trying to convey, and not trying to show all of the qualitative results for the entire study.
Yes, we have a student who did a presentation recently on her study, and I think she was trying to present like 5 to 7 themes, which like no one can hold that in their heads. No one's going to be able to like understand all of that and the meaning of it. And it was like, I had to fight her to try to get her to limit it to like 3 themes, because also she was doing photo voice. So she had photo voice results and the qualitative, and she had quantitative, and like no one can like hold all of that in their heads. There's not a clear story there. So had to really get her to like show a theme, show a quote or 2, a photo related to that, and then have like 2 other themes, and that was it. And that told a clearer story. And I think she got better feedback from people too, and better interaction from people. But if people are overwhelmed, they're not going to talk to you afterwards about your research.